Hello everyone, Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching. I have another Monday quarterback video for you. I'm going to play the entirety of this video without any interruptions, and then I'll go back and talk about things that are going on to better explain what's going on and talk about things that I think that were done right and or done wrong. Without further ado, here we go.
Be around the back from Hobbs range.
Trinity.
Correction, Northern Morris.
Navajo and Morris.
2-7 to dispatch. We have the motor assist just in front of a Leto on Turner. Stand by for the 28. There's multiple people here trying to push a black dually.
Stand by.
Hi. 2-7 to dispatch. 28 is going to be New Mexico boy Charles Mary George 57 BC MG 57. Hi, whose truck is this? Oh yeah, everyone's trying to see what's going on.
Hey, big dispatch. King 120 was Marlon and Morris.
Stop pushing his code. Marlon and Morris.
Hey, step out here, bro, real quick. Hey, I'm not dumb, okay? So step, both of you guys, come over here. Bro, listen to me. No, hey, both of you guys. 272 dispatch. Do you get a return for that 28? Hey! I got one running. Bro, I'm gonna tase you, bro. I'm gonna tase you. Hey! Bro, I'm gonna tase you. Bro, I'm gonna tase you. Stop.
Where's he at?
Stop. Stop. I'm gonna tase you, bro. Let me see your hands. Bro, stop. Bro, I'm gonna tase you. Put your hands behind your back now. I'm not joking anymore. Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back right now. Bro, listen to me, bro. I don't want to tase you. Hey, I will tase you, bro. Put your hands behind your back right now. One. Ah. I've been shot this time.
Sending body worn down in 10 seconds. Sending body worn down in 5 seconds.
Leg, right here.
Body worn down.
This guy.
Where you at?
My leg, bro. Where? My leg, I'm showing my leg.
Which one?
This one. I'm bleeding, bro.
You good?
Tell my life.
Where's the shot fire at?
Come on, this. My wife, I love her.
You good, compa?
Send it to dispatch. I've been shot in the leg. Dispatch. I'm by Valero.
Gonna hurt, compa?
Star 55 dispatch.
You good, compa?
Right. The male subject has a gun. Be careful, listen. He has a gun. The male subject with the camo jacket.
Which direction? Star 55, get hotel standby. Hobbs. Contact all captains. Contact all captains.
Fuck it.
You good, compa? You good, compa?
Bro, tell my wife I love her, baby.
You good?
And my baby too, please. Okay.
You okay? You good, compa? Hey, put your leg out. Put your leg straight. Put your leg straight. That's my. Put your leg straight.
I don't know where I'm shot. Rip my pants.
Here fast.
Rip my pants. Rip my pants so you can see where my bullet is.
We got the gun.
I got a knife.
I got tourniquet on.
Yeah.
Tourniquet's on. Stay with me. You're okay, okay? You got two, okay?
I'm good.
Is that the suspect right there?
Yes.
Okay.
He shot at me. That guy with the jacket shot at me.
Suspect is here. Suspect is here. Get the 55 here.
It's right here. Parked over there.
Yeah.
No, they have it. They took it over there. Stay with me, okay?
Everybody else sit down. Sit down.
That's two for my leg.
I was contact the county.
Okay. No, we got your units down. Hey.
I shot him a couple times.
Oh, so we got to stay with me. Yeah.
What's up? There's a female too that took off running.
Somebody
We got a unit out
There was two other vehicles. There was another vehicle where there were two females. They took off too.
Stay with me, okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
Where's the 55?
Above the 55, we're in the Wells Fargo parking lot. Wells Fargo.
Do you have blood or what?
You're okay.
Hey, Lord, I love you.
You just stay with me. You got it, okay?
Yeah.
I feel 55. No, he's here. That's 15 right there. Stay with me, okay?
Don't worry about radio. I got you, bro. Don't worry about it.
Breathe, just breathe. Yeah. You're doing good, man. You're doing damn good,
I
buddy.
give it too many fucking chances in the mouth. Don't worry about it. I give it too many chances. Please don't do that.
You need to breathe, okay? Just relax.
You're good, compa. Hey, you're good. Too many chances to give him. You're good. Too damn many chances to give him. You're good, compa.
You want to contact state? State?
Yeah, we're going to 255, two separate gunshot wound victims.
Don't worry, this one.
No, just trying to get us down. Yeah.
You okay? You okay?
We got you, bro. It's on. You're good. 55's on the way, brother.
Hey, sir.
55's on the way. Is there anybody else? Was this him?
It was him, a female. Took off running over here. I-15 there. There was another car with two females.
There was a
I started asking
car right
questions
there.
and took off right away.
That car right there, the female sitting outside the car. It's leaving right now.
Yeah, those females.
There's one sitting outside the car. Just on.
Thank you, bro. I got you, compa.
Where are we going?
There's a female sitting outside the car right there. That car right there.
They're in that car?
The car right there. Get in the side, man. Get your side. Get your side, bro.
I give it too many chances, bro.
You're good, compa. You're good, bud. You're good.
He's just the curb.
No, I hit the back of that stone right there.
Stop right there. You're good.
Leave it there.
Leave it.
Check to see if he has an exit.
Okay, you're right.
Give me a seal on the back. Give me a seal on his back.
We're going to 55 here,
Don't worry about it, man. Do it. Don't worry about it. You're good. Don't worry about it, man.
55 right here.
You're good, man.
Where's that charge? Whose charger is that? You got here. Was not able to county. Medic 1 for 503. You're going to have a officer.
What's your name?
I'm okay. Yeah,
One stage right there.
You guys take care of all my. Hey,
We got you. Don't worry about yourself, man. Shit, I got you. Don't worry about it. We got it.
Hey, bro, I'm going to start taking your shoe off, alright?
Left leg. I don't mind. I got your phone, I got your shirt. Okay? You're perfect.
In here,
Fuck off. You're good. You're good. By the way, it's fucking perfect. Took it? Who took it? I just look for it. Suspect took it? I just seen the female. See the female put on handcuffs, people kind of shooting, I told them, hey, stay there. That's her. She was running up there.
She's on bail.
These units going to be on the north side of Wells Fargo.
Where? Go check. Go take over, please.
You're good. You're doing good, okay? You're doing good. All right, you're a soldier. Come on. All right? You're doing good. That's right. You ain't stop there. Okay, you're running, okay?
Hey, so what we need to do is make sure that.
Hey, right here, we need to make sure we have to move, okay? We don't have any pulses on his leg, but he does have a tourniquet on, so let's be aware of that. Yeah, here. What do you need right here? You good?
I need a strip, I need IDs.
Who? Who was that? James, what was
Hey, we got his firearm and everything else? Yeah, we got everything else. Okay. Going up?
Yeah, the heater's on.
Where is it? Hey!
Lock it down. Get handcuffs.
Hey, stop! Police! Hobbs, police, stop! Put your hands behind your back.
Kevin!
Shut up. Let's go to this unit.
No! No!
Get down! Get down! Get down! Shot fire! Shot fire! Let me see your hands! Let me see your hands! Are you okay? Where you hit? In the leg, bro. Where? Leg. Let me. Be careful of this guy. Let me see your hands! 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 Where's the tourniquet? Where? Where? Which one? This one. You're good, compa. I'm ready to. You're good. Come on, you are. Come on, this. I walk around there. You're good, compa. This guy's having shot in the leg. This guy.
Sending body worn down in 10 seconds. Sending body worn down in 5 seconds.
Take a comp. What? The bell subject.
Body worn down.
Be careful, listen. He has a gun. The bell subject with a camel purple jacket. Hey, you're good, compa. You're good, compa. Well, come on, you're good. You're okay. Okay. You're okay. You're good, compa. You're good. Hey, put your leg out. Put your leg straight. Put your leg straight. Where's my unit? Put your leg straight. I don't know where. Hey, where's my pants? Where's my pants? Where's my pants so you can see where my bullet is? I got a knife. Tourniquet's on.
So this footage has no audio, and it's not in buffer mode or anything, but the audio's off, and so you won't hear anything for the next few minutes. All right, let's get into it. So this officer comes across a vehicle stalled in the middle of the roadway and gets out to do a motorist assist. This is something that, although I don't know the actual statistical data on this. It's something that I would have to guess that happens every single day in this country, all across this nation. And it's not just like it's, going on once a day, every day. It's probably happening like 50 times a day, every day, all across this nation. But those are just guesses. Like I said, I don't have the statistical data to back that up. But when you think about how many millions of people are driving in this country, and not every car is in tip-top shape. Sometimes there are nails in the road, etc. So this is a very, very common thing that law enforcement gets involved in. They come across stalled motorists, or they get called to come out and help stalled motorists. I know here in Kentucky, our Kentucky State Police troopers will actually get out and help people change their tire. Instead of having a tow truck come and perform that service, our troopers will actually assist people with changing their tire. Personally, I think that's a little too much. I think that's not something that's within the job duties or something that they should be expected to be doing, but they do that. Our city police, to my knowledge, sure as hell don't do that. But it's something, like I said, that all officers encounter at some point in their career, if not regularly occurring within their career. A lot of times it ends up being nothing. It's just, soccer mom going from point A to point B and gets a nail in her tire, or has a blowout, or the vehicle, a fuel line breaks. I mean, just all kinds of mechanical stuff can go on with a person's car that could lead to them being stopped in the middle of the road or ended up having to pull off to the side of the road. Sometimes, though, when police come into contact with people who are experiencing motor problems, these people happen to be criminals who are wanted or who have been doing stuff that they were not supposed to be doing, and their car just unfortunately, or you could maybe say fortunately, broke down on them. And this is one of those cases. This is a case of some criminals who had a vehicle breakdown, and this officer, just by happenstance, happened to cross them. This is one of the reasons why I don't advocate for regular people to stop and help other motorists, because you never have any idea who you're getting out with to help. It could be someone who just got done robbing people. It could be someone who just got done killing people. You could be pulling over to help Ted Bundy with a flat tire. You have no idea who you're stopping to help. And so that's one reason why I just don't advocate that you stop for people on the side of the road. The only way that I recommend that is if you're in an area that is not very well traveled, it's snowing, maybe there's bad cell reception within this particular area that you know of, then I could see, slowing down, rolling the windows partially down, saying, hey, I'm going to go call help for you. I'm going to go to the top of this hill where there's cell reception and call help for you. Is there anyone needing medical emergency? Other than that, if they're within the middle of the city, not your problem. And you don't need to make it your problem. Yeah, I get it. People have a desire to help fellow man. There are really good-hearted people who will stop and help others. And that's great. I love the fact that you're a good person. You have a good heart. But you have to think realistically and evaluate what's going on, and if, you know, the risk is versus if the risk is worth the reward. And for me, I think it's just a little too risky to be stopping to help people. I pass people all the time having car problems. I used to stop a lot way back in the day, several years back. I'd stop and help people on motorist assist. But I mean, not anymore. I mean, I don't. If I'm in my personal vehicle, I'm not stopping to help. It's just not worth it to me. I haven't had any bad experiences when I've, you know, on my own time in my personal vehicle stopping to help someone. There was actually one incident, and this was a long time ago. This was this makes me feel old to say this. It was over a decade ago. I remember stopping to help these people, and I get out, and they're like automatically know they're meth heads. Like, they just got that meth head look. They're sketchy. They got the little beady eyes looking around. Like, these are bad people. And there's more than one of them too. So there's that possibility that, you know, if I was a smaller person, you know, which, you know, viewers don't know how big I am. I'm about 6'7", and pretty big guy. So you know, if I was an average size guy or a little bit smaller, these three meth head dudes, if they really wanted to, like, whoop my ass. Even it being 7 foot, fucking almost 7 inches tall. Did I say 7 foot? 6 foot 7 inches tall. Like, being, you know, built like a fucking linebacker kind of dude. Even then, multiple dudes trying to come at me. Just because I'm big doesn't mean I can whoop everyone's ass. They can still give me a run for my money, but for an average size person or even smaller, if they really wanted to, they'd have no hesitation in rolling someone and robbing them and taking their damn car and going off with it. So it was kind of after that you know, when I stopped to help these dudes that were freaking meth heads, that I guess I was kind of like, well, maybe I shouldn't, you know, be so willing to want to help everybody. And since then, you know, I think I stopped for an old woman once before having, I think she had a flat tire or something. I don't know. I mean, she was old, like grandma age, kind of old. And I stopped to help her. And I was able to call her son for her, and her son came to help her out the rest of the way. Other than that, you know, I've stopped for accidents that were kind of in the middle of the road in front of me, that happened right there in front of me. But it's been a long time since I just came across, you know, some random people on the side of the road and decided I was going to help them. Like I said, anymore, I'm just like, fuck them. I mean, that sounds incredibly callous to say, but it's not my problem. It's really not. If you're an adult male, you can solve your own damn problems. Like, sorry, like, you're an adult male, you can solve your own shit. If you're an old woman, you know, I might be a little bit more inclined to want to stop to help. But it's just not worth the risk to me, because you never know who you're getting involved with and what their background is, what their story is. And they could easily victimize you, the helper. So anyway, this officer stops to help him for a motorist assist. And just his luck, he comes across the shithead criminals in the group. So he calls out his location where he's at and calls out the license plate for this vehicle. And again, that is a common thing to do. Officers will generally always call the license plate out over the radio to the dispatcher, and then the dispatcher can run the tags and see if the vehicle's reported stolen, if the vehicle has expired tags, if the vehicle's registered owner happens to be wanted, has, EPO, DVOs, whatever, or can see if they have an extensive criminal background, and they can alert the officer like, hey, this dude's got some prior assault on peace officer charges. That way the officer knows to be a little bit more alert, a little bit more on guard. Which he should already be on guard anyway, because he's dealing with unknown contacts. But when you're being told, hey, this person's got, prior records for assaulting police, or there's caution notes on them saying that, they'll kill police if they, can, then that's good information to know. That would be enough information to be like, well, I'm going back to my car, and I'm going to back my car up a little bit and wait till someone else gets here. Or at least back away further away and get your gun, or get your hand on your gun and be ready for some shit to pop off. Certainly not doing anything further to help this person and put yourself at a risk. So calling out the tags is a normal thing. We see that there's 2 females at the rear of this truck.
27 to the dispatcher. 20 is going to be New Mexico boy, Charles Mary George, 57 BC MG 57.
And then there's this woman right here wearing a hoodie who's getting in the back seat.
See what's going on?
And then, of course, the male in the driver's seat. So it's no surprise to me that this dirtbag criminal dude is choosing to sit in the driver's seat and have these girls in the back of the truck trying to push. Like that is really no surprise to me whatsoever. That's the kind of crap that you see out of people like this. There is no honor among thugs. There really isn't. There's no honor among these little street criminals. They may, from time to time try to say some shit, that makes them seem like they're a gentleman. There's some chivalry, whatever. No, the fact of the matter is they're not. There's nothing redeemable about them, and it's no surprise to me that his lazy ass is going to be sitting in the driver's seat and expecting the woman to be pushing this big ass dually truck. Like, this is a truck made for hauling heavy ass trailers. This is what you see farmers using. It's a heavy truck, and his ass is sitting in the driver's seat and the 2 girls in the back trying to push. Like, what a fucking douchebag. Like, this fuckboy is the same type of fuckboy that when he's with his woman and they pull up to a gas station, he'll sit in the car and have his woman get out and pump the gas. That is some fuckboy shit. And that's the type of people that are just like him. Criminals and thugs are like that. But people don't see that. They don't because they don't have to deal with these people on a regular basis. They just happen to see people like this in the news and whatnot. When you deal with people like this on a regular basis and you see them out in public, you'll start piecing this kind of stuff together. You'll get an idea that there really is no redeeming qualities for people like this. They're just overall pieces of shit. They really are. And for their family, everyone, for the most part, is going to, look after family and say good things about their family. So, of course, his family's going to say, oh, he's such a good person. He's a good-living person. He's always had a smile on his face, blah, 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 blah. It's kind of a biased opinion at that point. It's very far and few between you see actual family members get real and say stuff like, I kind of expected this was going to happen with this guy. He wasn't a good guy. Very far and few between you see that. And whenever I do see people say that, I like to recognize them for being real, for being honest, and for being stand up and saying the truth. But everyone else, the family's going to be like, oh, he went and handed out Bibles on Sundays, and he was getting his life together. He was going to go to college. Blah blah blah. Same bullshit. Same bullshit. When in reality, they're just pieces of shit. So this officer, he's stopping out on a motorist assist, and so far, there's nothing illegal going on. From a legal standpoint, the only thing involving law at this point would be the fact that there's probably a statute within New Mexico law that talks about vehicles blocking a roadway, and that vehicles need to be moved off the road for traffic and for safety. So that's realistically, that's probably the only statutory thing that's on the table here. But it's not like it's a criminal offense that this officer is going to be looking at for detaining these people on, right? So as it is right now, from what I could see in the video and from what I know about this case, there does not appear to be anything that the officer can articulate to say, hey, I have enough justification here to conduct a Terry stop. Or I can actually detain these people, legally tell them they're not free to go anywhere, and pat them down. There's nothing there that exists from what I can see. So, with that being said, you also notice that the officer's picking up on something. They're not acting right. Like there's something weird going on. For example, he's got this bright-ass flashlight shined at this guy, and this dude does not look towards him. He just keeps dicking around with these wires that are in his hand. Maybe jumper cables. I don't know what he has. But it also looks like there's a battery right there in the floorboard right here. So I don't know what he's doing. But this officer shines his bright-ass flashlight towards him and even speaks out to him. And this guy doesn't turn to look at him. He doesn't acknowledge the officer whatsoever. The girl here in the back, yeah, she kind of looks at him, but then she kind of turns around and then starts trying to have this conversation with these other girls and then talking to him and acting as if the officer's not even there, or, he's not important enough for her to be worried about and be looking at and talking to. That is typical behavior that you see out of people who are being evasive and deceitful. This is practically interviews and interrogations 101. The people who avert their eyes away from you and don't acknowledge you are the ones who are typically being evasive and deceitful. There's a saying that the eyes are a window to a person's soul, and that's very true. You can tell a lot about a person's eyes. For example, an officer is talking to someone at a call, like a domestic call or something like that, whatever, and they're talking to this person, and this person keeps looking down at their gun. They'll be looking at the officer and then look down at their gun, look back up, look down at the gun, look back up. That person, their eyes looking down at that gun, that's an indication that that person is thinking about going for that gun. When a person's talking to an officer and their eyes keep looking towards the door, if say they're in a house or they're in a building of some sort, and the officer's talking to them, trying to investigate something, and the person keeps looking towards the exit door, that's an indication that person's thinking about running. I call that target glancing. The way a person's eyes move when they're lying. So, eyes move to one side, which is indicative of the person trying to access the part of the brain that deals with memories. And if their eyes move another direction, that's indicative of the brain trying to access the part of the brain that is involved in make-believe. like making up shit. When people are being deceitful and evasive, they avoid eye contact with the person asking them questions and dealing with them. And you can see this with like little kids, right? Like if you have kids, then you know, you're going to know what I'm talking about. Or if you got friends or relatives with kids and you've been around them enough, you're going to know what I mean. You know, you can walk in and see crayon or marker drawings on the wall or something else, you know, like totally fucked up, and you go ask that kid, hey, how'd this happen? They're not going to look at you. They're going to look away. Or talking to them about a simple lie, you know, if they're not feeling confident enough to come up with a bold-faced lie and really get committed to it, you know, they're feeling a little bit of guilt or whatever, they're going to avoid eye contact. They're going to look away. The same with dogs. Like, for people with dogs, if and they stay inside your house and don't live in a kennel, you know, you come home and you see toilet paper shredded all over the place. You see the trash can knocked over and trash ripped out everywhere. And you see this in videos when people record this, you know, they'll record on their phone, they'll walk into the living room or something, and there's fucking trash strewn about everywhere. And they'll be like, who did this? And then they'll look at the dogs, and you see the dogs turn their heads and look away, like, oh, I don't know. I guess that was a damn ghost. Like, it's a common thing for people who are deceitful and trying to evade. I remember this, again, going back over a decade ago, way back in the day, I used to be a bouncer at a college bar, and I got really good with checking IDs and finding fake IDs, so I ended up being on the door a lot. I started to quickly notice that when people would come up and hand me their ID, they would either look at me or they wouldn't. For the most part, it's not like every single time, but in general, what I found is that when people came up to me and they did not make eye contact with me whatsoever, and they wanted to pretend like they were focused on their phone, or they were focused with talking to someone and they couldn't be bothered to hand me an ID and look at me, that was a clear indication to me that this person was being deceitful and was avoiding eye contact with me because they'd be afraid that I would find out. So their actions alone went ahead and told me this person's got a fake. I didn't even have to look at the ID. I just had to look at their face. So, and it's not like it came, you know, right away. You know, I don't know how long it took for me to kind of develop this, but it's just something that, you know, you notice patterns. And it eventually just got to the point where I would hold my hand out and I'd be looking at the people's faces as they would hand the ID out to me. And the ones who looked at me generally are confident and they know that, you know, obviously it's them and it's a normal interaction. I'd look down to the ID, match the face, and give it to them. And of course, you know, check the birthday. If it was a vertical here in Kentucky, if it was a Kentucky ID, because here in Kentucky, vertical IDs mean you're under 21, and horizontal mean that you're over 21. But it was a college town, so we had different states. So I checked the face and checked the date, and then hand it back. I wouldn't even sometimes scrutinize a whole lot on an ID if it passed the visual test for me. Just a quick cursory glance. And there could have been a lot of people who just put on that show of confidence and they really truly had a fake ID and they got in. I wouldn't doubt that's happened at all. But the people who didn't show any of that confidence and they completely avoided eye contact, as soon as I hold my hand out, I'm watching their face and they come up and they're avoiding eye contact and they hand the ID out and look somewhere else, I knew right then this person's got a fake ID. And of course, I'd look down, the face wouldn't match, or if it was an actual, fake ID, there would be something about the ID that was off. And sometimes that was either very noticeable or sometimes it wasn't. And the only reason why I took the extra time to really check that ID out is because they avoided eye contact with me and were acting deceitful. If it weren't for that, for some of them, if they would have had a little bit more confidence and maintained more eye contact, like I said, there's probably some people that end up letting in just based off their body language, their behaviors. And once you, of course, my life has revolved around work that has brought me into contact with people who are constantly lying. Like they're always lying to me. And when you're dealing in that kind of profession, you start to really get a really good feel for people's body languages and mannerisms and facial expressions and tone of voice. And you can get a pretty damn good baseline on when people are being bullshitters. Like, you can tell when someone's lying. You can tell when someone's trying to pretend like they're doing something else to, take attention away from something else, or make them, throw up their camouflage, act like, oh yeah, nothing serious is going on. Here I am bolting this thing down. Oh, yep, nothing's going on. Whatever. Like, you pick up on that pretty quick. And it's obvious to me this officer's picked up on their body language, and they're acting weird. Now, is that a crime? No. So he still doesn't have anything to articulate a Terry stop. Actually legally detaining these people and getting them out and searching them. They're just acting weird.
Hey, step out here, bro, real quick. Hey, I'm not dumb, okay? So step, both of you guys, come over here. Bro, listen to me. No, hey, both of you guys. 272 dispatch. Do you get a return for that 28?
So he's asking if the dispatcher has come back with any information on that license plate, because he knows there's something up with these people. They're acting weird. They're not acknowledging him the way normal people would, and they're just acting shady. They're acting deceitful. So he is, quote unquote, fishing for information now. He's trying to get something so that he can be able to articulate an investigative stop here, to actually have some legal weight behind detaining them and searching them. Because as it is right now, in my opinion, he doesn't really have enough to articulate that, and he can't throw the weight of the legal system behind him. He can't throw the weight of the badge behind telling them, hey, get out, put your hands on the car. Could he use some verbal judo and make them think that, he's able to do a little bit more than what he can at this point? Sure. Hell, that's a lot of policing right there. That's a lot of security work right there. That pushing the envelope, pushing the limit, that's police and security work 101 right there. Not, fully breaking the law, not fully violating people's rights, just banking on the fact that maybe they probably don't know their rights, even though they would be the first one to yell, I know my rights. They really don't know their rights. They don't know shit. They're stupid. Could he have raised his voice a little bit and, told them to get out of the car and put their hands where he can see them, and kind of take it that route without actually having the legal justification to start doing that? Sure, he could have. Happens a lot. I mean, obviously there's no statistical information on on that kind of stuff, but that happens. That, like I said, that is a part of police work and a part of security work. Could he have changed anything about what he was doing or how he was saying it? Yes, I think so. People size each other up all the time. It's a basic animalistic thing. You do it without even thinking about it. You're not consciously... Okay, for men, when another man comes in the room, you are not consciously thinking in your head, I wonder if I can take this guy. You are subconsciously thinking it without even knowing about it. And you'll start looking at a guy, sizing him up, looking him up and down. Look him up from toe to head. You'll look him up. And you do this subconsciously, not even thinking about it. There's other things that you do from an animalistic standpoint that you don't even think about. Like a man and a woman who are in a relationship together, walking down a sidewalk or walking into an area and come across a group of males. The guy with a woman will usually in some way do something to show that he has possession over that woman, whether it be hold her hand, take his arm and put it around her and pull her closer to him, put his hand around her shoulder, something. A man in a relationship with a woman will do something physically to overtly show to those other men that this woman is his possession. For people who have not had dinner table etiquette ingrained in them, that you will see when a person's eating food and someone comes near them, you will see some type of guarding action being taken with that food. You'll see their arm come up on the table. You may even see that arm kind of position itself to where it's between that person and the plate of food. You may see a change in the person's posture. And that person is not even consciously thinking about anything about protecting their food, but subconsciously they are. And you'll see those little movements occur, and the person don't even know why they're doing it. They're just, everyone thinks it's just like, random, thoughtless movement. It's not. It's your monkey brain taking over. It's your monkey brain saying, hey, this person's getting too close to my food. I need to guard it. This might be the only time I get to eat. This is survival. Walking down the sidewalk with your woman and a group of men, monkey brain's like, hey, show that this thing is mine. It's my possession, not theirs. They can't take it. It's basic animal shit. When you think about when you went to school, went to college, when you go to work, you go to the mall, wherever you go to a party, wherever you go, you are sizing people up. You're sizing up the opposite sex. You're looking at them for mating interests. Even for men who are married men will still look at other women without ever having the conscious intentions of doing anything with another woman. They can be very devotedly in love with their spouse and be in a very committed relationship and would never cheat on them whatsoever. But when a younger woman walks by with a nice ass, they're going to look. It is fucking instinctual. You can't erase monkey brain. That's millions of years of evolution that is in us. So you will size up the opposite sex. You will find those things that appear to be good traits in an opposite sex for mating purposes. And you will look at people of the same sex and size them up to try and determine if you're going to fight them. And you don't even consciously think about this. It just goes on subconsciously. Some people you recognize in some social interactions, whether it's you remember this from school, you remember it from church, at work. There have been people that you have come across and it became a conscious thought. And you thought to yourself, don't fuck with that person. Stay away from them. Don't piss them off. And that's because when you were subconsciously or looking around and studying stuff, it sent up a little flag. And you're recognizing this person can fuck me up. Don't want to go near them. Don't want to mess with them. So with that in your head, you have to think about command presence for an officer. Command presence means a lot. If you have a sloppy ass uniform, shirts all untucked and halfway hanging out, there's stains on your uniform, you look like chewed up bubble gum. Like you're a fucking soup sandwich. Subconsciously, people are going to be looking at that, and that's going to be making them feel less about you. They're not going to be perceiving you as a formidable threat or anything like that. And even it'll even extend to conscious thinking, and people are like, wow, that person's a slob. They're not about anything. Your mannerisms, your body language, your tone of voice is all able to be played into command presence. If you have this lazy posture about yourself and you just kind of lazily walk up and your facial expressions are, relaxed and maybe aloof, and you don't appear to be switched on, you just have this appearance of being soft, people are going to size that up subconsciously, and it's going to affect their conscious decisions. If you come in, think about state trooper. All right, for those of you here in Kentucky, think about a state trooper. Nice crisp uniform. Person gets out of the car, they're walking up, all crisp lines on their uniform. Usually most of the ones working the road are all reasonably fit, and they got that stoic face. They just they're like a fucking drill sergeant. They got that big ass hat on, the trooper hat, and when they talk, their voice, Trooper Sergeant Kentucky State Police, I pulled you over. When you look at someone like that, subconsciously you're looking up and you're sizing them and you're thinking, don't want to fuck with that guy. But when you take, and this is not indicative of all these other smaller agencies, but when you take, like a larger city cop, and I don't mean like a larger person, but like a larger city, a cop from a larger city, where they hire with a little bit of a different methodology than, say, a state police or highway patrol agency does. And this person's kind of a person who is able to kind of fall through the cracks and pass at bare minimum kind of stuff. And they're the type of person who knows they're always going to have backup, and they're not going to be 30 minutes away from anyone else. You take someone who's got a lazier walk. They don't have that chiseled look, and they don't have that stoic look on their face, and their voice isn't like drill sergeant-ish, I guess you could say. Subconsciously, you're going to be looking at them and you're going to be thinking way different about them than you were that trooper badass, right? And that can be a determining factor in whether or not a criminal is going to obey the officer and do what they say, or they're going to fight. Because they are sizing them up just like everyone else sizes them up, and sizes up other people. I would argue that there are probably several officer-involved shooting cases and line-of-duty deaths that the only reason they came about is because the officer did not have a good command presence. They did not present themselves in a way to that other person that unequivocally put in that person's head, don't fuck with this guy. Now, that's not saying that's every shooting case or line of duty case, but I'm saying that I think there's a lot of them out there that would fall under that. The aggressor looked at the officer and was like, I can take this fucker. They weren't afraid of him. And because they sized them up. And it's all about command presence. How you look, it's how you sound, it's how you carry yourself. Like I said, in your own life, even if you don't work in law enforcement, you don't work in security or anything like that. You could be IT, an office person, whatever. At some point in your life, whether it's been in school, it's been out at the grocery store, out at a party, out at a restaurant, something, you have come across a person who didn't do anything to you. You have no interactions with them whatsoever other than you looking at them. There's been someone that you've looked at, and based off how they looked, you said to yourself, don't fuck with them. This officer, his voice, in my opinion, the way he's projecting his voice, is not being done in a manner that would put it in these people's head, don't fuck with this guy. This guy means business. He kind of has like this nonchalant kind of talk. Like, hey guys, I'm not stupid. Hey, come over here. And then when they're not paying attention to him whatsoever, he just stops talking to him and starts getting on the radio. And the voice can mean everything. If you are... Think about your mom, your dad, and your teachers when you were doing something wrong. All right, mom and dad or grandma, when you did something wrong, they don't have to threaten you with a whipping. It's just how they say your name. If they say your full name, first, middle, and last, you know you fucked up. You know that you better stop what you're doing or there's going to be an or else. Your teachers, when they have, or your bus driver, when they raise their voice in a certain way, you knew, time out. We got to stop what we're doing. There's going to be consequences. If you played sports and your coach raised his voice a certain way, you knew that the goofing off and playing grab ass was done with for the moment. Like, it's time to get serious, time to shut up. And there doesn't have to be any threat of force with that. There doesn't have to be, hey, y'all be quiet. I'm going to come over here with this 2x4 and knock you across your fucking head. Like, nothing like that has to be said. It's just how you use your voice. Talking to someone and you want them to sit down and you're talking to them. Hey, man, have a seat. Hey, man, have a seat. Hey, man, have a seat. Sit down! Which one got your attention? Was it the soft, unauthoritative, hey man, sit down? Or was it the loud, forceful, sit down? One of those is going to get your attention. And it's probably going, if you're not listening, it's probably going to be the one it's a little bit of a louder voice. So I don't think that this officer, at least from the voice standpoint, had a command presence. Now, as far as what he looks like or anything like that, we don't get to see a whole lot of him. We do see some of him as he's laying on the ground. Of course, his uniform does look, squared away as any most street cop or officer is. He looks like a younger guy. He looks fit. But for this whole entire interaction, we don't really get to see his facial expressions or anything. We don't get to see what the suspects got to see. All we can mostly hear is his voice and how he's interacting with them. And based off what I can hear, I don't think he has command presence at this point. If he could have changed how he was talking to them and got a little bit more of a raised voice, I think that things could have played out differently, but they also could not have either. This guy could have been set on running, no matter if this guy got a little bit more boastful with his command presence. So they're acting weird, and the officer knows this, and he's trying to find something, I guess, to give him some weight behind being able to order them to do what he wants. Because right now, he's kind of doing verbal judo. Like, hey, come here. Like, they don't really have to come there. There's nothing that he's able to at least to my knowledge right now, from what I can see and what I know about this case, there's nothing for him to be able to legally detain them. There's nothing that indicates that a crime has been committed or that he has any reasonable suspicion that a crime has been committed. So although he is trying to use verbal judo up until this point, I don't think that he's using it or taking it to the level that he could be taking it to and still getting the desired result, getting compliance out of them. Now, the guy starts to bolt. He starts to run.
Hey!
So, is there a reason for the officer to be running after him if beforehand there was nothing to indicate that he had any justification to detain him under Terry versus Ohio? Well, this is a good question, and this is something that could be argued that it falls under Illinois versus Wardlow, or this could be something that ends up becoming case law. So Illinois versus Wardlow talks about unprovoked flight. Now, that's generally talked about in the context of, police are driving down the street through the neighborhood, and they see a person standing on the side of the building, and they stop, and they look at them, and the person takes off running. Well, that's unprovoked flight. Under Illinois versus Wardlow, officers do have a right to go detain a person. And, I could go and try and summarize all of Illinois versus Wardlow, but I'm going to let you all do the research on that one. And it's a good question. Does this fall under Illinois versus Wardlow? I kind of think it does. This guy is fleeing from police. I think this falls as a unprovoked flight. The officer wasn't there, detaining them for any investigative stops or anything like that. He just happened to come up and engage in or attempt to engage in a consensual conversation, and boom, this guy took off. So I kind of think it falls under there. Some people I think would probably argue that it doesn't.
I got one running. Bro, hold up. I'm gonna tase you, bro. I'm gonna tase you. Hey.
So he threatens the use of taser, and you hear the taser. In my opinion, he did not shoot the taser because you don't hear the loud pop. So the older taser units, the M26, the M18, the X26, the X26E, and the X26P, those models fire a cartridge that discharges from electricity. The newer tasers, the X2, X3, the Taser 7, those fire differently. Static or electricity does not make those cartridges go off. It's actually a data connection. The cartridge is kind of like an ink printer cartridge. It has like a little data ribbon, little metal contacts on there. And when you slide that cartridge into the gun, it mates up with the other little ribbons, little contacts in there. And there's a computer inside the taser gun itself. And it sends a message to that cartridge to say fire. So the cool thing about what that allows you to do is it allows you to do a warning arc over the front of the taser without setting that cartridge off. So back in the day, if you had an X26 Echo or you had the M18 taser, if you wanted to do a warning arc to get people's attention, you had to take the cartridge completely off the gun. Because if you pulled the trigger, you're going to shoot the darts and throw confetti everywhere. You'd have to take the old cartridge off, pull the trigger, make it cackle, get people's attention, let them know that you mean business, and then put the cartridge back on. Well, of course, that's a lot of movement and stuff, and you're having to put your hand over the cartridge bay under stress and all that and put it back on. Could lead to a negligent discharges, whatever. And in a tense and rapidly evolving situation, it may be extremely difficult to be able to perform that kind of thing. So the newer tasers with the little data ribbons, data connection things, I forget the terminology for it, they don't discharge by electricity. A signal, a data signal, goes through and tells it to fire. So that means you can have the electricity arcs going across the front of that cartridge and never have to worry about those cartridges going off. And there's an extra button on the tasers that's called a warning arc that allows you to press that button and energize the front of the taser and make it go bzzz. And that is for intimidation purposes. When you can point a taser at someone, or you can tilt it and hold it in the air and you press that little side button to make it go through the arcing process, that can get someone's attention. When they see electricity in the front and they hear that, they know, oh, that's going to hurt. That can deter people. Just pointing the laser at people can deter people. Call it red dot compliance. You put that red dot on someone's chest, for a lot of people, it can change their tune real quick because they know what's about to happen if they don't calm the hell down. So he's given a warning arc at this point, in my opinion, because you don't hear the cartridge go off. And cartridges you can hear when they go off. There's actually a primer, just similar to how a bullet casing would have a primer at the beginning of it. That primer goes off, and it launches, with inside this cartridge, it launches this little nitrogen cylinder forward to be punctured by this needle, this hypodermic needle. And the gas will vent through that hypodermic needle and piping into the cartridge bays and project those probes, those darts, forward and out of the cartridge itself. So anytime a cartridge goes off, you hear a pop. And then, of course, you hear the tit-tit-tit-tit-tit-tit-tit. So we didn't hear the pop. All we hear is the tit-tit-tit-tit-tit. That tells me he is pressing the arc button on there to make it just make noise, to try and scare this guy. Obviously, it doesn't work. This dude's not motivated by that.
Bro, oh, thank you. Bro, I'm gonna take you. Stop.
Where's he at?
Stop.
All right, first things first. We noticed that his lapel mic, his microphone, is sort of doing this dangling motion right here in front of him. Typically, when your lapel mic comes loose, unless the cord is from the radio, The radio's on your belt, and the lapel mic, the cord runs from your belt, from the radio, all the way up to wherever you clip it into at. So if you clip it up onto your shoulder, up at the V part of your shirt or whatever, if it comes off from there, of course, the whole mic is going to fall downwards and dangle around your knee area. It'll flop around there, which is the reason why some people don't like lapel mics. But we can see his lapel mic kind of dangling right there in front of him. It's not secured in any way, at least not the microphone piece, but we see it, and part of the cord is sort of shaking right there in the front. This tells me that either A, he possibly has his cord going up under his vest and is coming out through the top, and it's just kind of secured and pinned in place like that, or he's using a product called Mic Loop. And Mic Loop is a pretty cool product that remedies the issue of the lapel mic falling off. So if you've never heard of Mic Loop or seen anything about it, I highly suggest you go check them out. They do have a pretty cool product that can prevent your lapel mic falling completely off and dangling around your knee area. And it keeps it up there within your work zone so that even if the clips part itself comes off your uniform, it still stays within that region. It doesn't go any further.
I will tase you, bro. Let me see your hands. Bro, stop. Bro, I will tase you. We have to get you back now. I'm not joking anymore.
So again, he's doing another warning arc. We don't hear the distinctive pop of a cartridge going off. He's just hitting that warning arc button and making that taser make noise, trying to intimidate this guy and to get him to complying. It doesn't work. He's not complying. The threat of using a taser on this guy is not making him comply. Throwing his ass down to the ground is still not making him comply.
Hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back right now. Bro, listen to me, bro. I don't want to tase you.
So he has pushed this guy's jacket up out of the way to make room to be able to fire the taser into this guy. That's good. The only problem is he never fires his taser into the guy. In fact, here in a second, he will actually give the guy a countdown as if he's talking to a kid. It's like 3, 2, 1, or 1, 2, 3, whatever. And then the guy gets his gun out and shoots. So this whole time that this officer is struggling with him and arguing with him, trying to get compliance out of him, this guy's going for his gun. He is doing an in-fight weapons access. He is probably working his fingers under his stomach area, getting his shirt up, and reaching down to his gun and trying to get a grip on it this entire time, or going into his pocket. Don't know where he had it at, but he is, without a doubt, going for his gun during this interaction and trying to get it in fighting mode. And this officer's given him the entire time, the entire opportunity to get this task completed. The guy's already ran from him. He's threatened the use of taser on him. He's given 2 warning arcs. He slammed him to the ground. He's fighting with him. He's giving him verbal commands. This guy is not complying. At some point, you're going to have to stop telling the dude, stop doing this or else, stop doing this or else, stop doing this or else, or I'm going to tell you again, stop doing this, or I'm going to tell you again, stop doing this, I'm going to tell you again, stop doing this, I'm going to tell you again. That's not effective. That's not effective at all. And in fact, that's causing this situation to escalate further. It's causing this situation to actually end up escalating into a deadly force scenario. He should have fired that taser into this guy to gain compliance out of him. He got the perfect setup on the guy. He moved the jacket up out of the way. Thick jackets can cause clothing disconnects. It doesn't allow the probe to go all the way through and touch the skin or get close enough to the skin to ionize the area around it and allow for connectivity. He's pressing the gun into him, which is not an effective technique, because if he's pressing that gun all the way into him and he pulls the trigger, there's no room for the bay doors to clear out of the way and allow for the probes to come out and stick into his skin. So what he needs to be doing is holding the gun a couple inches away from his body within this same area, maybe go a little bit higher, hold the gun a few inches away, fire it. Now, you can't just stop right there, because the two probes are going to be too close together to achieve NMI, neuromuscular incapacitation. When you fire close proximity like that, the probes don't have a chance to separate. They're just going to be right on top of each other practically. And that's going to be no different than if you just do a standard drive stun without the cartridge attached. All you're going to be doing at that point is inflicting pain. You're not going to be locking up the muscles and confusing the nerves, getting the neuromuscular incapacitation. To be able to achieve an MI with a close proximity firing like that, you fire both probes within close proximity to each other, and then as it's cycling, you take the gun itself, and then you ram the end of that gun into a lower point of the body so that those metal contacts on the outside of the gun allow the electricity to start going in through the person through that point. So then you technically get those two different points of contact with distance to be able to achieve NMI. So he could have done a good above and below the belt close proximity firing. Go up to the area where you see the red at, pull the gun away a few inches, fire. Both probes are going to be right beside each other and go into him, and then just take the gun and drive it into his buttocks region and press in. And that's going to complete the circuit right there. That is going to cause NMI to be achieved. And this guy, he's not going to be able to do anything else. He's not going to be able to make the conscious effort and a physical effort to be able to actually do anything with his hands. He's not going to be able to control that. He's going to be locked up. And then once that happens, the officer can reach forward and pull one of his arms out and put it behind him and gain control over that. And then, cuff under power, tell him to put his hands back out. And if he continues to resist, give him another cycle and let the taser lay on the back of the guy, and then grab his arms and start to cuff under power. So it's got a 5-second cycle. While this dude's riding the 5 seconds, this officer can get a hold of both arms, pull them behind him, and start to get the cuffs on while he's feeling the effects of NMI. It's called arrest under power. Of course, that doesn't happen. And this guy ends up getting access to his gun and uses it against the officer. Shoots the officer in the leg.
Hey, I will tase you, bro. Put your hands back right now. One. Ah. I bet you got this time.
Sending body down in 10 seconds.
So that little robotic voice you heard, that is his body camera. He's using a product called Body Worn, and it's basically a cell phone. It is an Android-based phone, and it has actually some kind of cool features built into it. But it's an extremely bulky product, in my opinion. A little too large. But it has an accelerometer in it, and it can detect when an officer is running, and it can send an alert that an officer's in a foot chase. And, of course, as you can see right here, it can detect when the phone is in a horizontal plane, which would normally mean the officer's laying on their back or on their stomach, meaning they could be incapacitated. It doesn't know the difference between being knocked to your back or if you went to go take a prone position behind cover and start shooting, it's still going to go off. And in the other officer's camera footage, you see when he's bending over, helping this officer, his camera activates the alert thing because it senses that it's in a horizontal plane, and it says, sending body worn down, and it ends up sending out the message that he's down too, even though he's not down. He's just been over helping his partner. So it's kind of a cool feature to be able to kind of have a fail-safe that way if an officer does get knocked down and they are incapacitated or unconscious or something, then it sends an alert and it goes to the dispatch and then it goes to all the other users. And of course, it's because it's a cell phone, it has the ability to triangulate its location and show people exactly where it's at. So that's kind of cool. But the downside is it is freaking bulky. I mean, it is like a large phone, large cell phone.
Sending body worn down in 5 seconds.
Leg. Right here.
Body worn down.
This guy. My leg, bro.
So he's getting his tourniquet out. And it's a good thing he's carrying a tourniquet on him. You don't see a lot of people doing that, unfortunately. So it's good that he has a tourniquet on it, but I'm not so sure that he requires a tourniquet. Because in the second footage, when you see that they're taking his pant leg off, you don't really see any blood. You just kind of see what looks like a bullet hole. Or a mark or a spot where a bullet could have went into, but you don't see any excessive blood. Tourniquets are used for arterial bleeding, lots and lots of hemorrhaging. For example, a femoral artery, which the femoral artery is in the leg, but if you see that thing severed, you're going to see bright red blood being squirted out with the heartbeats. It's just going to be gushing, coming out. That's when you need to put a tourniquet on, when you have that type of bleeding. If you, for example, just took a razor blade and you cut a 1-inch gash in your leg, is that going to require a tourniquet? No. If you take a 4-inch knife and you stab it into your leg, is that going to require the use of a tourniquet? No. You can be stabbed and shot in the leg and it not hit a major artery, and it doesn't mean that you have to have a tourniquet put on that person to stop the bleeding. Something as simple as a pressure bandage would be just as fine to use. There's actually quite a few videos I've seen where people put tourniquets on when they shouldn't need to be messing with tourniquets. So that tells me that although they are trained to some extent on how to put these things on, the in-depth medical portion of it is just not there. There is no in-depth medical knowledge and training involved with this, or else they would know that there's no need to be putting a tourniquet on when you don't see a bunch of blood coming out of a person. It's kind of a waste of a tool right there. But at least he's carrying it. And like I said, you don't see that very often. You don't see officers carrying tourniquets on them. You may hear officers say, well, I got it in my car if I need it. Well, that's a stupid mindset. Like, that's dumb. Like, what if you're nowhere near your car? What if someone steals your car? Like the woman stole the other officer's car in this video. So we don't see that part, but when the woman gets handcuffed by the other officer and he leaves her, she actually ends up stealing a police car. So what if your car gets stolen? What if your car catches fire? What if you're nowhere near your car? What if you're pinned down by gunfire and you can't get to it? Because by going to it, you'll get your ass shot off. Those scenarios exist and they're plausible. And if that's going to be the case, your tourniquet might as well be parked in China somewhere. Like, it is unobtainable. It is the rest of the world. That's why you got to carry it on you. That way it's readily accessible. And the same with other medical gear. Like, there's other stuff you can carry on. You can carry a pressure bandage, compressed gauze, etc. And it don't take up a whole lot of room at all. So he starts to self-aid. He gets his tourniquet out. His partner ends up putting it on. And this officer talks about, getting them to cut the rest of his pant leg off, so that they can better assess what his injuries are, if anything else needs to be done. So he's actually acting, and he also talks to dispatch during this. He He gets on his radio, tells dispatch that the person shot him is wearing the camo jacket. He's got the gun still. So he has, although you can detect some stress in his voice, he's still cool, calm, and collective in a sense after being shot and being involved in a gunfight. He's able to very clearly and concisely talk on the radio to dispatch and talk to the other officers there and tell them, hey, cut the rest of my pant leg off so you can see my bullet hole. That's good. I've seen other videos where people are just frantically screaming and just acting like a chicken with its head cut off. So that tells me that there has probably been some degree of reality-based training for him. He's had some type of stress inoculation, or it could be that he has very minimal of that, and he's just of the nature where, he hasn't gotten all flustered. Like it's not much flusters him and sends him overboard. You hear him tell the other officer, tell my wife that I love her, and then I think he says something about, tell my kid. So, that's a lot to hear right there. And I think it's kind of one of those unintended consequences, I guess you could say, of the body cameras. They capture moments like that, and that's stuff you see in the movies, right? Like, the war scene, the guy's like, tell my wife I love her. It's not often that stuff's captured on body cameras here. And so it really, really illustrates the realness of this, and it shows the human side of police that I think a lot of people just don't see or fully recognize all the way. You'll see these people, these naysayers, the woke liberal left, whenever they complain about an officer involved shooting and they accuse the police of being racist and murderous. They'll say stuff like, "Oh, well, the suspect, he had a family who cared about him and loved him, and blah blah blah." Well, so does the officer. What, you think he's a robot? No, he's a human too. There are people who care about him as well. And when you hear him say, tell my wife I love her, that, for me, that just that sticks out. Like that makes you become more aware, I guess. It just, like, it piques your interest, and you're like, oh. And it makes you think. The other officers rendering aid to him.
Rip my pants so you can see where my bullet is.
They're rendering aid to him. They're talking to him. They're giving him positive feedback. Hey, you're good, man. You're good. You're gonna make it. That's also an important aspect of providing medical care, providing that mental healing for that person. Which, in EMS training, say don't promise people things. Don't tell them they're going to live or whatever when you don't know if they are or not. But it can go a long way with helping a person by giving them positive reinforcement and telling them, hey, man, you're going to be all right. You're going to be okay. We got you. You're doing good. That can ease some of their stress and bring some of their heart rate down and just overall be better for them. Puts them in a better place physically and mentally. Towards the end here, we see the camera get knocked to the ground. Well, it's not just the camera that's being knocked to the ground. His entire vest is taken off, and they start to search him for additional wounds. So anytime, even though you see the most obvious wound, and it's the most obvious one they recognize, you still need to be checking for additional injuries. Because there's people who've been shot in gunfights, and they didn't know they've been shot. There's been people who've been shot in gunfights and they only knew about one shot, but they didn't know about this other shot. There's been people who've been stabbed in fights and they didn't even recognize the fact they'd been stabbed. They just thought the other person was punching them. So you have to be vigilant in looking for other injuries. Even though the most obvious one's right there in front of you, doesn't mean that there's not another one. So they remove his vest and they start searching him, see if he has any other gunshot wounds. And the camera ends up facing the ground. But you can hear a lot of the conversations going on in the background and what's going on. And then eventually, towards the end, someone picks his vest up and starts walking away with it. And that's another one of those little things that I don't think people think about. And certainly people, work in the streets, work in the beat. I don't think it's something that they oftentimes consciously think about. Someone one day might be having to pick your gear up off the ground and take it somewhere. You one day might have to pick up someone else's gear off the ground and carry it somewhere. That's a deep thought. And then when you see his vest being picked up and carried away by someone else because he's unable to now because he's been shot, like that's a powerful image. That's like I said, that's deep. And I don't think that's something that a lot of people think about. And obviously, I don't think it's something that was a consideration when it comes to body cameras. An unintended consequence, I guess you could say. Obviously, the intention of the body cameras is to capture, evidence and things happening, but eventually, it comes to the point where, someone's got to pick this thing up and turn it off, and pick up someone's equipment. And just the thought of that, like I said, people don't think about that stuff. They don't think about, there could be a day where someone has to pick up my vest off the ground because they had to rip it off of me and try and save my life. Someone is going to have to pick my gun belt up off the ground because they ripped it off of me trying to save my life after being shot. My uniform shirt is going to be cut up with shears and left on the side of the road when people are rendering medical aid to me after I've been shot. Like, people don't think about that stuff. And when you see this, it really brings that into reality. So I think this is kind of a powerful image where you see his equipment being picked up by someone else and carried off. So the other video, I'm not going to go to another video. I think I've been kind of going on pretty long at this point. But in the other video, you see the other officer pull up, and he puts the woman in handcuffs. Well, the woman, she ends up getting into a unsecured police car and then tries to steal it and take off. So that happens a lot. Lots of cop cars being stolen. There are some products out there that, I forget the exact name of them, but there's products out there that can be installed in a vehicle, and you can flip a switch, and basically what happens once you park and you turn that switch on, unless you turn that switch off and someone tries to put the car from park to drive or reverse, whatever, take it out of park, it shuts the vehicle down. It won't go anywhere. If you don't have stuff like that built into the vehicles, some policies are to turn the vehicle ignition off, and some of the vehicles are wired in a way so that all the stuff can still remain on. Some agencies don't wire their vehicles like that. They wire everything through the ignition, and the only way to turn the lights and stuff on is if the ignition is in the on position, which means you got to have a key in there, right? So, if your agency has it set up to where you can turn the ignition off and you still be able to keep the computer turned on and have the rotating, or not the rotating lights, my age is talking, you're still able to have the LED lights turned on, then great. Do that. Turn your car off and just leave the lights flashing. The LEDs, they're not going to drain it. You know, like back in the day when you had the old rotators, like you kind of had to have the car running to run those things, because there were like motors running on top of the car, turning the lights or the little mirrors. LEDs, they don't draw that much power. Like, don't quote me on this, but you could probably leave your LED light bar running for 20 minutes and it's not going to drain the battery in your car low enough to where you couldn't start it. Like, they just don't draw that much power. So yeah, if you can turn the key off and leave all the emergency equipment on, do that. If not, then at bare minimum, last resort, you should just be locking your door every time you get out of your car. You know, in the chargers, you know, when you close the door, you press the little button on top of the handle, it locks it. Do that. Or as you're walking away, reach down to your fob, press the lock button, lock the vehicle, prevent someone from trying to get in it. Now, obviously, if there's no system thing in place that would prevent them from taking off in the car after breaking the window and gaining access, then, you know, it is what it is. But at least it would slow a person down long enough to where people would kind of notice that the person is trying to gain access to this cop car and they're not in a police uniform, and that looks kind of suspicious, and, you know, it would draw attention, and it could potentially end up stopping them. Or it could just completely stop them altogether because they try the door and they can't get it, so they're going to go on to something else. So always lock your doors when you get out. Even if you do have the ability to flip a switch and it causes the vehicle to shut down if someone tries to move it out of park, you should still be locking your doors, because there's stuff inside the vehicle that you don't want people getting easy access to, especially if you have a rifle in the front. Even though, you know, you may have the magnetic button off to the side, and someone isn't going to immediately know that you have to press this button to make that thing disengage, they can still gain access to the cab of the vehicle and start dicking with things they don't need to be dicking with. So always lock your door when you get out of the car to prevent people from gaining access to the vehicle. And if you can turn the ignition off and take the key with you and still leave equipment on, do that. That's the best, safest, sure bet way of preventing anyone from ever taking anything or taking the vehicle away. The second officer, when he does get there and you see the one officer laying on the ground, the suspect laying on the ground, he comes up to him, not right up on him, but he gets near him and he's yelling at him to show him his hands and everything. You kind of see that person's legs move a little bit, but you don't really see a whole lot of movement coming from that guy. Obviously, the camera angle doesn't very vividly show this person's condition. And we can't see with the same clarity that that officer could see with his own eyes. So he could have seen that that person appeared to be in a condition that he was incapacitated and he was not an immediate threat anymore, and decided to go ahead and holster up and start rendering aid to his partner. I'm not the biggest fan of that because when you're dealing with pistol ammunition, it's not the strongest, and people have been able to get back up after being shot, even after appearing to be incapacitated. And that gun was right there near him. So I believe that officer should have been a little bit more mindful of that and went up and kicked that gun further away from him, or at least take that gun and move it somewhere else out of his reach. At minimum, I'd say kick it out of the way and then grab that guy and start to cuff him. Now, if he would have had the concern about trying to, one, maintain lethal cover and try and grab this guy and roll him over and cuff him, and the guy could be playing possum and could like attack him, I could see that being a concern. You know, he's by himself. His other partner's laying on the ground. You know, he might not want to get in this entangled, fight with a guy. So at that point, when he's giving these verbal commands, hey, put your hands up where I can see him, put your hands up where I can see him, and the dude refuses to comply, he can still use force at this point. Doesn't mean he have to use deadly physical force. Doesn't mean he have to shoot the guy with a gun again. But he could pull his taser out and fire a taser into this guy. And if there's no reaction from him whatsoever, then that's a probably a pretty good clear indication this dude's totally incapacitated and he's not going to be fighting you once you grab a hold of him. Or you could paint his face with pepper spray. And if there's no reaction from that, that's a pretty good clear indication this dude's probably not going to grab a hold of you if you go grab him and roll him over and cuff him. We've seen things like that in other videos where there's been kind of like this standoff thing. A person's been shot, officers approach, and before they ever get up to the person within, easy striking distance of the suspect, they'll fire a less than lethal munition at the person. There's been plenty of videos where I've seen officers will fire a 12-gauge beanbag at a person laying on the ground after they've been shot to see if there's some kind of reaction out of them before touching them. Because sometimes people play possum. They do. They play possum and do that to ambush. I've seen videos where officers will deploy 37 millimeter or 40 millimeter impact munition on someone to see if there's a reaction out of them. I've seen videos where officers have deployed a canine on someone to see what's going on with them, see if they're playing possum, trying to get them to comply with those orders to pull their arms out and put them out to the side where they can see them. So those are certainly options that he could have considered when approaching this guy and wanting to secure him. That way he can very safely go render medical aid to his partner and not be worried about this dude sitting up and shooting at him with another gun. He very easily could have continued to give verbal commands. The dude refused to give them, pull his taser out, fire taser into his legs, see that this dude doesn't yelp or do anything, and then be like, all right, he's incapacitated, but still go ahead and cuff just in case, he decides to wake up 30 seconds later. And if he had another gun on him, even if he kicked the initial gun away, even if he could have had another gun on him, and that's always a real possibility. If you find one gun, chances are you're probably going to find another. So I would have liked to have seen him cuff that guy and secure him before holstering up and providing medical aid to his partner. That could have turned really bad on their part. But like I said, he could have been able to see with the clarity of his human eye more than what we can see with this camera, and could have seen that that guy was not likely to be getting up anytime soon. But we can't always take those appearances and be like, yeah, that guy's out. Because there's been people who've been shot in the head and they still got back up. Famous case out of Miami, Florida, back in the 80s between the FBI and a couple bank robbers. The FBI goes to initiate a stop on 2 suspected bank robbers, and gunfight happens. At the very beginning of this gunfight, one of them takes a gunshot to the head, and it temporarily knocks him out. He then wakes up in the middle of the gunfight and crawls out of his car, walks back to the FBI agent's vehicle, and gets in it with the anticipation of driving off in it. His partner takes a hit to the side of the chest in the very beginning of this gunfight, goes in, hits his heart area. It's a lethal hit. He's going to die from it eventually, but it's not immediately incapacitating. He takes multiple more hits from pistol and shotgun during this fight, and he goes on to kill 2 FBI agents and seriously wound a few others. He just had the fighting mindset. He had a will to fight. And no drugs in their systems whatsoever. Just had a will to fight. And he was able to, after being shot multiple times, kill 2 FBI agents and seriously wound a few others. And then when Ed Morales came up and emptied his revolver into them when they're sitting in the FBI car trying to take off, shoots them both, they don't immediately die from it. They're incapacitated. One takes a round and it ends up hitting his spinal cord. But he's still alive. He's still breathing. But he's obviously incapacitated at that point. So just because you shoot someone multiple times doesn't mean they're dead and never getting back up. They could still be alive after that. They can still be able to get back up and start doing stuff. They could be temporarily knocked out. That's always a real possibility, and that's always that's one thing I talk about when you see police handcuff people after they've been shot. Because a lot of people ask questions about that, or they make comments about that. Like, why'd they cuff him after shooting him 10 times? Don't they know he's dead? No, they don't. They don't know he's dead. He could be temporarily unconscious and then be able to get back up. So, anyway, not much else to say, I don't think. At time of, so this happened in February 23rd. At time of recording, it is March 10th, and there's not a whole lot of information about this case. The woman, to my knowledge, is still on the run out there. I want to say she had warrants on her initially. The guy, he's a criminal. He's got a criminal background, which is that's the case with all these. It's not like these people are just random, like innocent people who've done nothing wrong and decided to run and do stuff. Like they've all got criminal backgrounds. Like it's they're drains on society. Let's just say that. I can't remember specifically what it is his criminal background is, but like I said, it's pretty fresh into this, so there's not a whole lot of information out there. But as always, the camera shows what happens, and the camera shows that the officers did nothing wrong. At least in a legal sense and in a moral sense. Tactically, some things could have been better than others because they've done things differently. Yeah, certainly, yeah. But as far as from a legal aspect and a moral aspect, ain't nothing wrong here. These body camera footage, in my opinion, exonerates this officer and shows that he did his job and the other person tried to unjustifiably murder a police officer. This was not a police officer just wanting to go out and murder someone. That's not the case at all. Contrary to what the woke liberal left try to make people think, that's not what's going on here, and it's not what's going on in any of these other incidents. Time after time after time after time after time after time after time, the body camera footage proves the officers are in the right, and it's the dirtbag criminals who are in the wrong. If you like what you hear and see, go ahead and give me a like and a share. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more Monday quarterback videos. Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching.